Welcome back. I'm Eva, and today I want to talk to you about my postpartum doula training. So I guess the first thing you were probably wondering is, what is a postpartum doula? So a postpartum doula is a non-medical person that helps you emotionally, physically, and educationally after you give birth. So when you come home from the hospital, this is someone that helps you in your house, and they help you and your family adjust to life with this new baby and your new role as a parent or a second-time parent. Just generally helps you through this big transition. Postpartum doulas normally work through what they call the fourth trimester, so like the first 12 weeks after birth, although some may stay on in the case of multiples, or if your child has additional health needs, or if you experience health complications during your birth and are gonna have a tougher recovery. That is the kind of short version of what a postpartum doula is. And so now I'm gonna talk to you about my training. So my training was 2 weeks ago. It was in New Hampshire. Unlike my birth training, this one was 4 days. New Hampshire was different. As you can imagine, I was the only Black person in my training cohort. My postpartum cohort was much smaller than my birth doula cohort. We only had maybe 5 people in that group. And in general, I'm finding that among my peers, most would rather just do birth doulaing and not postpartum. Found a few that will do both. Our trainer only likes to do postpartum doulaing. I haven't yet met anyone else that only likes to do postpartum. That said, this trainer was amazing. I know I said that about my birth doula training, but this one was truly amazing. She knew her stuff. She had a way with words. She was very nurturing. She was very passionate about postpartum doulaing. She's also very passionate about DONA, so I learned actually a lot about DONA that I didn't know before. DONA even has its own little theme song, so that's cool. She talked a lot about what makes DONA different, which is mainly our code of ethics and our standards of care, the fact that we have them, and just the fact that we believe that everyone that wants a doula should be able to have one. Something that makes us very different is that DONA would encourage you to lower your prices or supplement it or volunteer if you were able to, and they don't do that and think that by volunteering or offering your services for free that you are kind of negating the work that we do and saying that that's something that's not worth money, but just offering it to people that may not have the resources. I think it's just a different philosophy than other certifying organizations, and I'm proud to be a part of an organization that believes that this work is important and that it is more important than having a paycheck. That's all I'll say about that. Something else that I liked about this training is that we talked about very diverse topics throughout the whole training, which I was pleasantly surprised from talking about the Moynihan Report and the myth of absent Black fathers, which, if you know me, is something that I have studied and wrote my dissertation on fathers. We talked about trans men having babies and what does that look like and how would you support someone through that. We talked about different types of families. We talked about the Black mother mortality rate and how it's even worse for Native American women. I was just really impressed at the ways that she was able to get a lot of diverse experiences into this training, especially because, as I said in my birth training video, I have been finding that when we talk about diversity, it is normally just other countries and just totally skipping over the diversity that we have in this country. That was my biggest surprise, and it worked, and it did get my cohort to think more. It's clear that some people in my cohort never had to think about racial and gender diversity, and this was their first time to do that. I had taught the day before, and I was just in no mood to do that emotional work, so I didn't, and I don't really feel bad about that. I did do some emotional lifting in terms of race on the second and third and fourth day, but that first day I just couldn't do it, and I was glad that my instructor took that on, and she did it with humility, and I appreciate that because we were in New Hampshire. I only saw maybe to Black people the 4 days that I was there. I was very grateful that she even tackled it and that she was willing to do the work. You will probably hear me say the words non-medical a lot in this video because we were basically beat over the head with the idea that we are non-medical practitioners. And I think that's very important because there will be a lot of times when your client will ask you a question and you are not allowed to diagnose something, even if you're like 100% sure that you know what it is, you are still not allowed to diagnose anything. There's a lot of practicing how to say, you know, like, let's check the paperwork you got from your doctor, or if you're really concerned, we should call your doctor. And I do want to make that clear that it's not us kind of like shirking our responsibility. It's just that we are not trained, so we cannot be diagnosing hemorrhaging. We cannot diagnose infections. We are not allowed to give babies medication. A lot of that is to spare us because that is liability should something go wrong, even though I think for a lot of people it doesn't seem like a big deal to give like a medicated cream, like rub that on a baby, but that's still medical. So you will hear me probably refer to that a lot. That said, she said our main goal is the acronym NEAR. N is for nurture, E is for educate, A is for assess, and R is for refer. So again, much like the birth doula, we will do referrals out to, you know, like lactation consultants. We may refer you right back to your doctor for things like if you are bleeding heavily or if you think you have an infection on your cesarean wound. Just being aware of what our scope is, that if we have additional training, we can either charge for that or just include it in our fee. So our instructor is a CLC, a certified lactation consultant, or maybe she was a CLE, a certified lactation educator. They're basically the same thing. And so she could do some kind of assessment about breastfeeding and latching and what's going on and could help in that capacity. Even though I've had now 2 breastfeeding courses, I'm not like a lactation consultant in any way. And so if a mother is having a hard time, like I could try to help with latch, but I couldn't take that much further than a quick look and maybe a suggestion. I couldn't sit there and diagnose anything that was going on with them. I understand that could possibly be frustrating if you have a ton of questions and your postpartum doula is just constantly referring you back to paperwork that you got from your doctor or it's referring you back to the doctor, but that is also like what the scope of our work is. I just wanted to get that out the way off the bat. Talked about a lot of things. One of the things I thought that was really interesting is we talked about what babies actually look like when they're born, because on TV they come out and they have like maybe some white stuff on them, and normally it's like a really big baby because it's not an infant. So we talked about how infants are hairy and how that is normal. We talked about how they come out swollen, how their head shape is, you know, like a little cone for a few days. And I just thought it was really interesting to talk about that, because if you haven't seen a newborn in real life, you might be like, what the hell is going on with my kid? Why does my kid look like this? We talked a lot about newborn cues, and these are just ways that your infant is telling you what they need and what they want. And I thought that was really interesting because when you think of infants, you don't really think of someone who can really like articulate their needs or like even has like the cognitive ability to know what their needs are. And granted, some of these things are reflexes, but like especially with hunger, there are quite a few cues before a baby starts crying that you can start to observe so that you can avoid the crying. And there are cues for hunger, there are cues for babies that are overstimulated, something that I did not know that babies could be, but that could also be the reason why your infant is crying a lot. I thought that was just really helpful for us to know, and I thought it was helpful for us to be able to teach parents and even second-time parents about these cues, and that is something that your postpartum doula can teach you, how to notice what these cues are, what do they mean, and can spare you and your baby from tears, which are super sad. Because when infants cry, they make a little frowny face, and then they cry, and it's just adorable. We talked a lot about the changing roles for everyone in the family. Obviously, the biggest role that I would have to deal with as a postpartum doula is the role from either not being a parent to becoming a parent, but even being a parent of 1 child to becoming the parent of 2 or the parent of 3. We spent some time talking about like what does that role change mean and how that also impacts relationships and how that is something that you may not have thought you would have to contend with as a postpartum doula, but it is, because you might be dealing with people who they're the first one in their friends group to have children and then their friends just disappear, or just going from someone who was a workaholic to someone who has to take it slow and can't do that anymore, or someone who is just not going back to work at all. And then also grandparents, like you have this child, but now your child has a child, and how do you react to that? This felt very social worky to me. I know it's not a word, but it's a word. And it felt more in line with what I'm used to and what I talk to my clients about. That was kind of comforting to feel like I knew something at least that I could do. We also talked about changes to your body. I mean, I talked a little bit about this in my birth training video, but your poor body, after you give birth, your uterus trying to contract back to the size it was, your body parts trying to find their ways back to where they were, the bleeding, incontinence. What I didn't know is that there are pelvic floor physical therapists, and if you don't know that, now you do. And if sex is painful, if you are still suffering from incontinence after birth, there is hope and there is help. And hopefully your postpartum doula knows of this resource to refer you to that person, because I did not know that was a thing, but it's a thing. And it's a very helpful thing. Changes to your breast and breastfeeding, and I thought that this round of breastfeeding education was way more helpful than the other round. My trainer did the breastfeeding training too, but she also covered it during our training, and so the hour she spent during our main training, I felt I learned more than I did in the 3-hour training that we had before. I appreciated that she recognizes not everyone can breastfeed. While we can all agree breast milk is ideal for infants, if you can't breastfeed, that doesn't make you a bad mother, and also recognizing how breastfeeding can become a major source of stress and anxiety among women. And so I was just very grateful that she even acknowledged that and just said that this was ideal, but then if not, donor milk, and then if not, formula. And while your baby is not going to be getting all the things that can help with gut health and immunization, if you can't breastfeed and if you can't afford breast milk, then that's what you got to do, and that's okay. And so I felt so much better hearing someone say that, especially someone who was trained in breastfeeding and obviously was a breastfeeding advocate, but just someone who could acknowledge that it's not always possible for everyone, and that your mental health is not worth breastfeeding if it is shattering your mental health. So I felt very happy to have a breastfeeding teacher that taught that, but also she talked to us about, the 3 stages of breast milk. And again, we talked about how the baby's stomach changes. And so the sphere of not feeding your baby enough, especially in the first 3 days, how we can kind of help with that in a non-medical way, just by saying your baby's stomach is the size of a cherry. This little bit of colostrum you're producing is actually enough. Hopefully easing some fears that way. I gotta say, I was very, very impressed with our breastfeeding section, and then I got to stay for another breastfeeding, module. And while I am still no expert on breastfeeding, I felt much more confident after this one, and competent. I felt really good about that. So integrating the baby into the family. I think a lot of people just think you have to worry about the parents and how they're going to adjust to this new role, but I like that she took the time to talk to us about helping siblings adjust to being older siblings and to no longer being only siblings, because that's gonna happen, and there are a lot of different ways that children can deal with that, and also depending on their age, how they can understand what these changes mean for them. I thought that was really helpful. We did talk about integrating pets into this new living situation, and I was really thankful that she acknowledged pets, because my cats are a really big part of my life, and if I should be so lucky to have children, I'm gonna need some help adjusting my cats to this new person who is going to be taking up all my time, because currently my cats get all my time and attention, and they're used to it, and they will care. Pets care. I like that she did that, but also we talked about grandparents and how all of our examples were kind of like worst case scenarios because grandparents have been parents. And if me as a doula, if I'm recommending something that's very different than what the grandparent did, how are they feeling? And are they feeling that I'm judging what they did when they were younger, either because they didn't know or because they just had a different choice? And so I am not really looking forward to dealing with grandparents who feel that I'm questioning their parenting and who may take, my suggestion to their child as me saying that what they did as a grandparent was wrong. But I'm also prepared for that situation and I understand it. We are there to educate, obviously, the parents, but we're also there to educate the grandparents too. And so if need be, to have, the research in the literature to show that whatever I'm recommending or whatever I'm encouraging the parent to do, or whatever I'm validating the parent and what they're choosing to do, is not an affront to how they raise their child, and I'm not by any means judging what they did to their child. That said, I will advocate for their child because it's their baby and it's their parenthood, and I'm assuming that what their child is doing is safe. And I think the thing that I will experience the most is this idea that the baby is not getting enough milk from the mother, and this also the idea of we need to supplement what the baby is getting from the mother with rice milk, which was popular before, or with formula, and just kind of letting the grandparents know that especially if mom is feeding on cue, then that baby is getting enough food. And also that no one is going to let their grandchild starve. Like I said, we work with the whole family and we work with the whole family, and I anticipate meeting a lot of the family, especially in the first few days if I'm there all day or if I'm there for a large chunk of the day. It was really good to get trained and have situations in what we're reenacting what could happen with different family members in different situations, and they had all happened to our trainer, so they were not so far off base that it can never happen. So that was really helpful to just A, know what we were getting into, but B, also just to be prepared with some responses to kind of handle a situation before it gets out of hand. One thing I really, really liked is that she spent a lot of time talking about perinatal mental health. So your mental health during pregnancy and right after labor, especially if someone had a traumatic labor. And I really appreciated that she went through the time to go through all the different mental disorders one may experience. She gave us a screening tool, which I really appreciated. As a social worker, I'm aware of these mental illnesses and the possibility of a woman getting them, and I know what to look for, but it was good to see that we are training the doulas in what to look for and also in how to address this in a way that is non-confrontational and not in a I think you're crazy, you need help kind of way, but in a very caring and supportive way. And what was also helpful is that we got to see a video about how fathers were reacting to their wives when their wives were suffering from a mental illness, and some of them knew and some of them didn't know, and they got help and what happened afterwards. As a social worker, I was very, very happy to get that training because I hadn't gotten it before. So this video is getting kind of long. The other thing that I really appreciated that she talked about was loss and grief. So what happens if they lose the baby? And as a birth and bereavement doula, this is something that I'm preparing for in a whole nother training, but I thought it was really surprising that she even brought it up at all, because that did not come up in our birth doula training, which is surprising because that and the first week after birth are the most dangerous times for a baby. We did do a little bit of training on that. We did talk a little bit about money, how different people grieve, and how either you're offered to refund that money could be interpreted as kind of saying that life didn't matter, or that you are negating the work that you did, or could be appreciated because now they have to pay for a funeral, or if they don't want it, you can donate it. And so I just thought that even that having that conversation was A, very surprising, but B, very helpful to see how people outside of my org that I'm doing my bereavement training, how they handle loss and grief. I just thought that was really good to have that conversation, because it's not out of the realm of possibility that that may happen. And we talked about if the baby dies, but we also talked about if the mother died, which was also really surprising. And what our trainer did, because she's been in both of the situations, it's heavy. You know, like this kind of stuff is heavy, but it is necessary. So I was very thankful that we talked about that. The thing I liked the most, I guess, is kind of like her mantra, which is we are trying to work ourselves out of a job. My goal is to be there and to help you to the point where you don't need any help anymore, where you can say one day, Eva, we got this, thank you, and we're on our way. And hopefully we're not breaking contracts when we do that, but the goal really is to have people feeling so comfortable and so, you know, at ease with their new life and through this transition that they no longer need our help anymore, and we can leave feeling confident that this family's got it, you know? And I really do love this idea of like, I'm just working myself out of a job, and you don't normally do that with the job. You normally want to stay at the job for a long time, but I do like this idea of myself working myself out of a job. We did talk about boundaries, and I think that boundaries would be an impediment to working yourself out of a job if your clients become too reliant on you. And so we did talk a bit about boundaries. So not only just like emotional boundaries, but boundaries in the work we do. I'm in a few groups online, and like these postpartum doulas are out here like mowing lawns and like raking and mopping, and I was just like, where is the line here? Because like I don't even mop in my own house. You know, the postpartum doulas do light housework, and so for me, I was like, what is light? I need that to be very clear because, you know, like I said, I'm in all these groups and these postpartum doulas are doing all kinds of things, putting furniture together. And I just was like, no, I'm not doing it. So it was very helpful to get some clear lines on boundaries too, in terms of like, what are we doing and what are we not doing? And feeling empowered enough to say like, this is outside the scope of my work, but maybe you should hire a house cleaner if you're out here wanting me to like wash your windows. And like, while light housework can help make it easier for the mom, and that's the whole point, is to make some things easier for the mom, I can't be cleaning your whole house because that is not really my job. My job is to help you and your baby and your family adjust to this new life. And so, you know, postpartum doulas doing light housework is to help make things easier. So, you know, I don't have a problem throwing a load of laundry in the wash. I don't have a problem filling up a dishwasher. I might even wash your dishes by hand, but any hardcore stuff is not gonna happen. But there are doulas that do that, and I don't know if they do that because they don't know how to set boundaries or if because they generally like that stuff. I have a friend, she really likes house cleaning. So for her, like mopping up a floor, no big deal. For me, might be a problem. Just setting boundaries, which is not easy in life anyway, but particularly when you're there to help someone. I really hope that for me and my postpartum doula work, my work is mostly with the people that I am there to work with, and not doing the little things around the house or running errands, because that's not the kind of postpartum doula that I would like to be. So that said, I thought the training was really helpful, especially because I went in kind of confused about our roles because of all these groups I've been on, but that is the internet for you. Again, I thought the training was amazing. My trainer's name was Krista. She runs an org called Relief in New Hampshire. I don't know how many of you are in New Hampshire, but it's a place for parents to get some support and with their kid. You can bring your kid with you there. And she was incredible. Hands down the best trainer so far. I've only had a few, but she was the best, and I really appreciated her. And it was a really good training, and I'm ready to get out there and help these new parents and hold some new babies and smell them because they smell so good. Good training, thumbs up again. And I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.